And barbecue is a simple thing that people are now trying to make something really different. And I don't really think that's what it is at the core, you know. My name is Shane Stiles, founder of Style Switch Barbecue since 2011. And my role has been a little bit of everything over the time, from general manager to dishwasher, cutter. And now I'm kind of more just director of operations over 3 locations. Prior to even going to Franklin Barbecue for the first time, and me and my dad had talked about forever, like starting a barbecue joint. Man, we were more professional eaters than we were professional cooks. Growing up, every Saturday we were eating barbecue, whether it was from Louis Miller, Southside, back in the day, Jackson's Barbecue in Thrall, Taylor Cafe sometimes. And man, just didn't think much of it at the time. It was just what we were used to. Man, one day my dad called me and said, "Hey, I drove by Mimosas today, and there's I saw Lance putting the going out of business sign up." And I was like, "All right, Dad, we got to do it."
So there was a small amount of time where I was away from Louis Miller Barbecue, between Louis Miller and Style Switch, where I had opened a restaurant with my wife in Taylor called Mimosa. I'd kind of gotten out of barbecue for a minute. The way this all got together between Shane and me and Style Switch was a phone call, and it was the morning after we closed Mimosa. So he had been talking to his dad and some friends and brother-in-law and whatnot about opening this barbecue restaurant. And every time that he did, they'd say, "Yeah, you know, you ought to get that guy Lance that was cooking for Bobby, you know." So anyway, they had been talking about it, and I had been running Mimosa with my wife and everything 7 days a week. I mean, I had my head down for a year and a half, not even really looking in the barbecue world at all. And we ended up having to close. It just wasn't as busy as it needed to be for us to stay open. And so we had to close. And the night we did, a little too much information maybe, but the night we did, man, we thought we had to drink all the beer and wine that was in the place before we walked away from it. So the next morning, man, I was pretty hungover. And I'd sat in the shower for about an hour, you know, crying and praying, just closed the restaurant. And I come into the living room and my phone rang, and I didn't even recognize the number. But I went ahead and answered it, and it was Shane.
I picked up the yellow pages the next day, man, and like found Lance's number and Taylor, called him. He answered the phone politely, "What the you want?" And I said, "Man, I know it's bad timing right now," but I told him who it was, and he's like, "Man, I don't think I know who you are." I was like, "Yeah, you know, just a big customer at Louis." And he's like, "What do you look like?" And I said, "Man, you know, tall, white, me and my dad both." He's like, "Man, what did you order?" I said, "I got 2 links of sausage and a half-pound lean, and my dad got 2 slices fatty every time." He goes, "I know exactly who you are." And so I just kind of pitched to him what I was thinking, man. And he was like, "Well, I don't have a lot of options right now, so I'll listen to you."
So he pitched the idea to me, you know, "We want to open a barbecue restaurant. We want you to be the cook." And at that point I was like, I don't want to do any paperwork. I don't want to do any office work. I was really jaded from the way that treated me at Mimosa. So he wanted to meet in person. He wanted to meet. We met at Franklin in the line.
Franklin's had just moved from their place on 35 Concordia area to the brick and mortar. I said, "Just meet me in the line here, man." And he pulled up. He just walked up to me. He's like, "Man, what the hell are all these people doing here?" And I said, "Man, they're waiting for barbecue."
I pull up and I see him there, and I recognized him, you know, from Louis Miller or whatever. And I walked up and I was like, "What the hell is going on? What are these people doing?" Because they're lined up for barbecue, man. So there's obviously a need for this type of barbecue in this town. And I want you to, you know, make the barbecue and I'll run the restaurant.
And he was like, "Well, I'm in."
Well, I'm Lance Kirkpatrick, and I'm the lead pit master here at Style Switch Barbecue. Shane and I founded the restaurant together in 2011. You know, when I started cooking at Louis Miller, it was February of 2001. It was a turning point in my life, you know, it truly was. Louis started the business and Bobby bought the restaurant part of it from him. They were a grocery store to begin with. Yeah, so I just answered an ad in the paper. I had been bartending, and I had a real rough New Year's Eve that January, and I'd quit. I was done, and I just picked up a local paper, and Bobby was advertising for help, and I went in and talked to him, and we just hit it off right away. We sat down and talked at that front table right by the register, you know, where he always sat and took his breaks or whatnot. That's where we sat and talked, and he offered me the position, and he offered me, you know, salary and everything. We agreed to it, and I came in, you know, the next morning and started. I picked up with him, man. I didn't know about barbecue. Barbecue from West Texas, where I'm from, that's grilling. You know, we would do burgers and hot dogs and, you know, fajitas on the grill. That was barbecue to us. And I learned everything about brisket, pork ribs, you know, sausage, chicken, all of that from Bobby. So I either get here at 1 or 2 in the morning, depending on what my day looks like. If I've got to make rib sauce, I get here at 1. So what my day looks like on those days, I'll get here at 1 o'clock, kick some fires back up, and maybe have a cigarette or whatever, and get my station set up, and I'll get my sauce started. And for me, that means I'm going to be doing a 9-gallon batch of sauce that's going to last me through the weekend. I'm just doing a 1 pot. Usually when I come in, I have 2 of these. So this will give me 4.5 gallons. On Friday, I made 9 gallons. And it's Sunday, and I've already got to make a kicker 4-gallon batch to make it through the day.
Do you just have the recipe off the top of your head?
Oh, yeah, dude. We started making this recipe in a pot about that big, and we would make it about every 2 or 3 days for our ribs. So we're doing like, what, 22, 24 gallons of this stuff a week. And that's just one restaurant. So it's about an hour set on that. So I'll get my sauce going, I'll get my ingredients laid out. I've smoked the serranos the day before, so I'll blend my serranos in with my vinegar, and I'll get all my sugar anyway, and I'll build that sauce. And I'll finally get that where I can turn it off, or to not turn it off, turn it down to simmer or whatever. But the barbecue making starts at 2:30 in the morning for me. I come in and I get my ribs out, and I like to have the first rib pit loaded by 2:30. That's my rib time. And then I'll get both pits loaded full of ribs, and I'm done with rib load by about 3:15 or so. Kick my fires, get those all set. And then by 4 a.m. I'm loading turkey breasts. So between 3 and 3:15 to 4, I'm back in the prep room on the prep table, and I'm trimming out my turkeys for the day and getting the seasoning on those. I get those loaded, kick fires, always kicking fires. You go from one thing, then you go hit fires, especially when you got 5 pits you're working. You're gonna walk around and hit all temps and fires, and then you're gonna go back to your prep for whatever your next protein load is. So Texas Monthly had been doing their top 50 list. I think they were on their second rendition of it, and Bobby was top 3. At that point, it was him, Coopers and Llano, and Kreitz and Lockhart, I think, were the top 3 whenever I started working for him. I didn't know anything about that, what that really meant, you know, because I wasn't part of the barbecue world or anything. Because what was cool back then, there wasn't Facebook and Instagram and all of the social medias. You didn't know about Louis Miller unless you knew about Louis Miller. If you were from the area or somebody took you there, we got groups from Austin, and sure enough, people would fly in and stuff like that, you know, that were traveling, but you just had to know it was there. That was the cool thing about it. And it was these other small town barbecue restaurants like Lockhart, you know, like Kreitz and Schmitty's and Black's, and, you know, Southside Market in Elgin, of course, had been there for 100 years plus, you know, and these were the places that Shane's dad took him to. And that's where Shane fell in love with barbecue, was going to these places like that with his dad.
There's a little bit of a somber part of this story, man. My dad was 9 days away from retiring and coming working here after 36 years at his job, and he passed away in his sleep overnight from a massive heart attack. So, you know, it was just something that, like, you get one go around, like, do what you love, man. And again, working in restaurants all through school and stuff, man, it's like, it's a disease. It gets in your bones, and either have no choice to do it or stay way, way away. Our first location, man, we lived for south of the river for about a year. And long story less long, we had this location, man, and then the 25th hour, another group came in and just money whipped us. It would have been pretty funny though, because we didn't know at the same time John Miller was opening his barbecue place directly across the street through another couple from Taylor, Russell and Delia Becker that owned the property. So we ended up opening a month apart. Us and I think he called it J. Mueller Barbecue at the time. So, which was his second stint in Austin. So John, back in 2000, had John Miller over on Manor Road. So that was like the first one in Austin, I guess, if you ask me. Then Aaron, and then us and John started at the same time. And then, man, it was about, I'd say like 3 to maybe 4 years when you had Freeman's pop up, you had Terry Black's pop up, Mickelwait's been right there, if not a little longer than some of those guys. So it just, man, it was like overnight, like a tidal wave of barbecue in Austin.
You know, I've been asked before how it all kind of started. My friend Wyatt McSpadden, who's the barbecue photographer and friend, you know, he calls it the golden age of barbecue. You know, it was a renaissance of barbecue for Austin, Texas. And I always say that it was Aaron and John Miller. You know, John opened his place on Manor Road. There's been barbecue in Austin for years, don't get me wrong. There's been great places like, you know, County Line, Ironworks Barbecue, Sam's Barbecue, all of these traditional, but it wasn't like a craft barbecue kind of situation. I really credit those two guys for really starting up what was going on. Aaron was doing a trailer situation, and then he moved into brick and mortar, you know, right there early 2011, I think. Then we started building the place in August. We found this location and started building in August, and were able to open by December. And it was right around that time, I think, when Mickelwait opened and Valentina's and a few others that you kind of see the names on the list. When people put names on lists, it was those of us that were starting right around that time. Around 3 o'clock, Chris McNutt arrives, and he's my morning helper on rib shift. We call it rib shift, but we're cooking everything else. Anyway, so from there, it's chicken load at 5:30, and that pretty much just those items in the morning, the beef ribs, the pork ribs, the turkey, and the chicken. And while I'm doing all of that, when I'm out here doing that, Chris and I kind of take turns from the pit yard to the prep room. So when I come out here to do that, he goes into the prep room and starts cutting pork bellies into burnt ends. And then when I get through back here, I jump in there and he's just finishing up, and then I'll put the trays down to load the burnt ends on, and then we'll go out to one of the other pits and we'll load burnt ends on that pit. So then usually by about 5:30 or 6, we will have all 5 pits loaded by that time. And we kind of have to keep that timeline going because it has to even keep going after our load. Because then at 8 o'clock in the morning, the brisket team arrives and they want to get all of their stuff set. They'll start pulling out their briskets to load by 8:30 or so.
There are very few universal rules. There's a lot of guidelines, there's a lot of lines on the court, so you can't, go over or go out of bounds or whatever, but like specifically, every single pit is going to act different, and every location is going to act different. The meat's going to act different, the wood's going to act different, the weather's going to act different. If you're in a wind tunnel, it's going to act different. Personally, we've kind of come to some things that we really like. We open the dampers all the way, right? We do complete convection, full through all the way, but that's literally because we are in the wind tunnel, you know what I mean? Like, we need the convection. It's instinctive, and like that's the thing. And then also it's like different cooks, align themselves with different mentalities. And then I think the biggest thing is just production style. Fundamentally, like, I've cooked 2,500 pounds in the last 2 days. It's a balancing act. And again, it's instincts and timers.
The last things that we want to cook are the sausage links for the day.
Each stick has about 40 to 50 links on it. And I'll hang probably 6 per side, getting up close to about 500 links. Me and another guy, Chris Crowley, we split our duties between one of us will be grinding and stuffing and linking, while the other one's smoking the back that they stuffed and linked the day prior. Yeah, no, there's a lot of love that's put into it for sure.
They've already been pre-smoked by our sausage guys, so whenever it's cook time for those, we're just gonna get the already smoked ones that are in the cooler and place them on the pit to bring them back up to 10. Everything is to have everything ready, for 11 o'clock for opening time. And our motto, our kind of business plan from day one was not to sell out of food, because some of these other places that had opened up, like Franklin, they were selling out of food. There was no craft style barbecue, in the later hours in Austin.
When we started, my whole thing was, we're gonna serve lunch and dinner. We're gonna have a full menu for lunch and dinner. We're not gonna have 5 sausage links just for dinner. And man, it's not gonna take longer than 15 minutes to get barbecue. And sometimes I still don't know if that was a good plan or not, but trying to push the whole staff to move faster to get the people through the line, man. It was intense, man. Lucky for me, one of my very best friends also started this place with us, and he's been here since day one. He's just the most laid-back dude on earth. Dwayne is the man, and I stay in the background. Dwayne stays in the front, and it works.
And so what that meant for me, it wasn't uncommon to do a 16-hour day. I would be here at midnight, or 11 to start working and trimming on briskets and getting them on the pit. I had this guy work for me named Andy Stapp. He worked for me and my wife at Mimosa. And I really liked the kid. I liked his program. He was young. He was like 19, 20 years old. So I offered him a position. I was like, man, it could be a career shot if you want it, if you want to come back to Austin and do this with me. And so he jumped at the chance, which was cool. So I say that to say, once I got some help, we were doing 12 and 12. I was working midnight to noon, and Andy was working noon to midnight. And we were just running fires 24 hours a day to keep up with the demand. And this was pretty much when we had gone ahead and gotten the second pit, which we named Django. And we just kept fires lit 24 hours, man. Sunday night into Monday is the only time that we're not cooking because we're closed Monday. Whenever we were building the restaurant, Shane was doing his part on making the cool restaurant look cool and everything. My part was to kind of get a pit built, start working on menu, start doing this and that. Well, I'd met David Close out of Houston, Close Pits. He would come through Louis Miller every time he was anywhere close to Taylor. He would come through Louis Miller. I got to know him a little bit, so he was the first person I called was David. A lot of people were using Close Pits right then. I have several friends that still use them. They're great pits. We talked to him. He designed one for that room. So cool story about that pit. It shows up and it was on, a semi-trailer all strapped down and everything. And I'm a little guy already, but I'm taking a picture up of this big pit and I posted it onto Facebook, and one of my good friends and Taylor commented on there, that thing looks like Megatron. Where'd y'all find it? Buried in the ice or something like that? And I was like, bro, you just named my pit. So we called it Megatron from then on out. And I tell you what, we cooked a lot of good food on that pit. We thought we were going to open a barbecue restaurant with one pit, and we did.
Yeah.
We had one pit, one cook. We just loaded all the proteins on that one pit. And so I would come in about 10 or 11 at night, and I'd start seasoning my briskets, and I'd have them on about midnight. I was doing about an 8 to 10 hour brisket right then. And I was doing pretty hot and fast the way Bobby taught me to do. Those close pits have shelves on them. And there were 3 different cooking shelf grates in there you could pull in and out, and 3 different doors. I'd put beef ribs on lower shelves and pork ribs on upper shelves, and then I would load up. I could fit 16 briskets on the 3 shelves in the middle, and then I would drag 5 or 6 more off on the back door. whenever I could do a kind of a shuffle and everything and tighten them up, I'd move the back doors up, and then I could load my turkey and chicken over here. And then when I could pull something off, then I pulled that off, then I could load sausage. I mean, I literally cooked 9 proteins on one pit. It had hardly any flow. We tried a lot of different things to get the airflow. I would build a higher fire in that pit. I would do all types of things for a little bit better airflow. It was crazy. Like, when I tell you we opened up and got busy right away, we opened up and got busy, like right away. And so we just kept filling up the pit. The first Moberg we got is actually a one-off Moberg. It's a weird story, kind of. We had a fellow named Christopher McGee working for us, and he had a friend who had started a weld on a pit on 1,000 gallon. He had cut the doors, and maybe that was about all he had done, and he kind of flaked out on him. So we had met Sonny. Sonny's wife knew one of Shane's friends' wives or something like this, and so he agreed to finish this pit that Chris's friend had started the weld on. So that was our first Moberg, and when we got it back here, we started cooking on it, and within about a week or two, I was telling Shane, we need to replace these close pits with all Mobergs, and because I thought I'd figured out those close pits pretty good and was making some pretty good barbecue on them, but we started cooking on those pits, and I was nice, like, son of a gun. You know, just the efficiency of the pit, the way it held the fire and ran it, and just loved the way it treated the barbecue, man. It was really cool. And started making plans to replace the close pits with the Moberg pits. I texted Sonny one morning. We had like 72 pork ribs all cooking at the same time, and they all came off at the same time. And I was like, that's a testament to a smooth cooking pit. The first ones we got here on location were Poncho and Lefty, and just super impressed with the weld on it, man. It's just a beautiful rig. It's a side-by-side 1,000 gallon pit on one trailer with a big awning over both sides, and right away just really enjoyed cooking on that pit. Again, it's just that pull and that consistent temperature from one end to the other is just, it's amazing. The Poncho and Lefty name is kind of cool, man. It's a country western song that Townes Van Zandt wrote, that Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson made famous. It's about a couple of Mexican bandits. We kind of have a country western kind of theme going around here, and that kind of vibe and everything. And I don't even remember who ended up naming it. And it's kind of cool because Lefty's on the right. So after we got the second double trailer, it was Catherine's turn to name the pits. So she named them Kenny and Dolly after Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. So they're great pits too. You know, they're a little different. There's no paint or anything on them. It's kind of a raw build. And sometimes I'll get mad at Kenny. I call him Kenneth Ray. I said that's what his mama would have called him. We had one more close pit to replace. We had one inside the pit room there, and it was just going to be a hassle to get that one out of the pit room and get another one in. But we finally decided we had to do it. We wanted a Moberg in there too. So we had to move Poncho and Lefty and Kenny and Dolly and move them out of the way, and take the whole back wall down of the pit room and pull that close pit out and put Buford T in there. So that's Buford T Justice, you know, after the famous sheriff in the Smokey and the Bandit movies.
Then you have a sausage smoker.
Right, sausage smoker doesn't have a name, but...
Okay. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Everything's named, the sausage smoker, the most probably unique one out of them all.
Yeah, so that's a very unique smoker. That's a one-off Moberg. There's not another one like it. Sonny and Christopher McGee designed that pit. It was designed to smoke sausage, and it was kind of designed after the counter pit at Louis Miller with the opening doors in the front and the firebox locally situated down on the back side of it. Chris drew up some great plans for it with Sonny, and together they came up with this. You know, it's got a unique baffling system in there to guide the heat and the smoke up to 2 chimneys that are strategically located to do that. But it's a really great pit. It's a even smoking pit, and those guys will smoke, you know, 300, 500 pounds of sausage a day. It took them a minute, man. We got them some ThermalWorks remote gauges and stuff, so they could kind of probe links at different places and lay probes in different places and watch the remote and find out how it was flowing. And then I guess it was doing that about 3 or 4 weeks, and they took the probes out. They had it figured out or whatever. We want to have a consistent product every day, and in order for us to have a consistent product every day, it requires us to have consistent preparation and consistent execution every day. Man, we've built a restaurant here it's fun to work here, you know, and that's been part of our motto you know, since day one too. I mean, literally Shane told me that in our first meeting, you know, this is going to be fun. We're going to have a fun job. We're making barbecue, you know, we're making people happy. And that's kind of like, of course, like you said, man, it's not like that every day. Some days it's sure enough work. I try to work right next to these guys, man. I'm not trying to push anybody or pull anybody into doing something they don't want to do. I want them to see me. I enjoy working next to folks. You know, I got a strong work ethic my dad gave me, and then I learned how to put that towards barbecue with Bobby. He was one of the hardest working guys you ever want to know.
I mean, my favorite saying to Lance is the gratitude is all mine. Like, you know, there's not another person on this planet that I could have started a business with that would have compared to Lance. He doesn't ever call in sick. He takes probably 5 days of vacation a year. Man, he's just a leader through and through. Without Lance, there's no Style Switch Barbecue. So me and Lance started this together.
So Shane Stiles put a lot of trust in me. You know, I could get a little emotional about it. It just means the world to me, man. I just closed down my dream restaurant, you know, and Shane called me up to do this. People have heroes and angels. Shane's both. He offered this job to me when I needed it. And I just love that guy. He's the best. And it's just out of that obligation to that trust that he put in me. You know, that was at a time where I kind of felt untrustworthy. I was having some issues with alcohol, and I was having some issues with my marriage, and I kind of felt untrustworthy. And Shane put that trust to me. And as corny as it sounds, man, I'll work every day for that guy. Well, to me, barbecue just means a way of life, really, because I've kind of made it my life. I've had to rearrange a lot of things to be able to do this on these weird hours in the middle of the night. You know, my wife's made sacrifices. I've made sacrifices with friends and family for, you know, being able to be here day in and day out and do this. But, you know, it saved my life, honestly. Barbecue and just the barbecue community, and you know, the way Shane and I have approached this whole thing has just been, you know, together, and it just it's just a way of life. You know, it started out as just something to do. It started out as just a job for me, but when I first saw the effect that this food has on people and has on the customer and the whole thing about it, I got the you know, it got in my blood. And I ended up having a really good teacher, so I got kind of good at it. You know, there's one of my favorite movies. There's a quote in it that says, "Be careful what you get good at," you know, because you'll get to do plenty of it. Well, Shane keeps running the business like he does, and we keep making good food, so we got plenty of work. I felt real fortunate in the days to have learned from Bobby, you know, and Bobby had learned from Fred Fontaine, who was the longtime pit master at Louis Miller. And so I kind of felt like I got the knowledge of both of those great pit masters through Bobby. And I would like to think that some of the guys that I've trained, they're getting that same information, you know, so they're learning what I learned from Bobby and what the little tricks I might have added along the way, because I might have learned something cooking with somebody like Andy or like, you know, Chris or somebody that's taught me something. I learned something from these guys all the time, but what I'd like for somebody really, I guess, to remember is say that what I had learned and kept going is still going. I make good barbecue. We have a lot of guys back here that make good barbecue, and I can name them all off. And we've got a sausage crew. We've got guys that come in and prep the meats for us. We've got guys, you know, like Kyle that runs every restaurant, all 3 stores, taking stuff back and forth. I would just really like to say that this restaurant is a group of very special people. You know, we're the dedication involved and the level of quality of food that we put out and the quantity of food we put out, I think surpasses a lot of expectations. And it certainly, you know, surpasses my expectations, you know, daily. And I would just say, I would want my coworkers to hear me say how much I appreciate them. You know, in the early days, it was Lance this, Lance that, Lance's, you know, and I had, you know, Andy and Alan Michael, and then we hired Bill, you know, that I was training my way. But when we started hiring the other cooks with the more talent than me, that's when I really got to be a better cook. And learning from these guys that I cook with has made me a better cook. We've had some really great cooks come through here. Andy Stapp, you know, like I've said, Bill Dumas, you know, Braun and Inkle, they brought some really good talent over here. And we just learned from all of those guys. And I would just say a big thank you is what I'd say to all the guys working here now, and even, you know, the great guys that have come and gone. We've created a place where we've made friends out of our customers and family out of our coworkers, and it comes through in the food. You know, it comes through in the relationships that we build with these people, not just with our coworkers, but with the customers. You know, and that's what's everything about barbecue, you know, is that relationship between cook, server, and customer. There's just something magical about that. And if you can get a couple of guys, you know, like Shane and Dwayne and me, and you know, we are like family. Man, I spend more time around these people than I do my family. Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, I've spent, you know, 10 or 12 hours down here making barbecue and having a great time with these guys that I love. And I just, you know, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
My final question for you is it safe to call you the Yoda of barbecue?
I've been called the Yoda of barbecue. Yeah.
I think it's well deserved.